America is back.
And so is Donald Trump. And like last time, he's ushered in chaos, confusion, and controversy.
I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you.
I wish you did.
The news cycle is moving at dizzying speed as Trump enacts mass deportations, a regressive economic agenda, and an unpredictable foreign policy. My guest tonight is a former Republican congressman who was both budget director and chief of staff to President Trump during his first term. The one-time White House insider has a unique understanding of Republican politics, and especially Trump and how he operates. I'm Mehdi Hasan, and tonight I'll be going head-to-head with Mick Mulvaney in London's historic Conway Hall. I'll challenge him on President Trump's immigration policies, whether Trump is mentally stable, and why he still supports the president after once vowing to never vote for him again. Tonight, I'll also be joined by a panel of experts. George Conway, a lawyer, former Republican and co-founder of the Lincoln Project. Christina Greer, associate professor of political science at Fordham University. And Greg Swensen, chairman of Republicans Overseas UK.
Welcome back, everyone. Got a really fun one for you today. Journalist Medhi Hasan on his show, Head to Head, will be interviewing and debating Mick Mulvaney, who was Donald Trump's first chief of staff. We'll also be hearing from George Conway, the Republican lawyer and ex-husband of Kellyanne Conway. They both were pretty much a part of the first Donald Trump administration. And we'll also be hearing from Christina Greer. This is going to be a good one, guys. So we're going to start off with the interview/debate between Mick Mulvaney and Medhi Hasan. Let's get started.
Mick Mulvaney, thank you for joining me on Head to Head tonight here in London.
Medhi, I'm looking forward to it.
So let's start with your own journey on Donald Trump, who you know well. I think it's fair to say you've been on quite a flip-flopping journey when it comes to President Trump. You once called him a terrible human being. Then you became his White House chief of staff.
Yes.
Then after January 6th, you resigned from the government and you said you wouldn't vote for him again. Then you did vote for him again last year. A man you know incited an insurrection against the US government. Why?
Fair enough. By the way, I'm not the only person to have varying opinions on Donald Trump. In fact, I think his vice president currently has said some interesting things about him. The part about the horrible person, I remember very vividly because he would remind me of it on a regular basis. I was running for Congress at the time, and I had a debate that evening that the Access Hollywood tape came out.
Yes.
This is the one where he said you grab women by the privates and so forth. I gave a candid answer to it. And he never let me forget it. By the way, the man's capacity for forgiveness is infinite. His capacity for forgetfulness is absolutely non-existent. I can tell you this, is I worked with him for 3 years. I never saw any misogyny. I never saw any racial disparity, racism. I never saw the things that people accuse him of doing.
We'll come back to that.
Is he a perfect guy? No.
But you said you wouldn't vote for him again because of the insurrection.
Yeah, well, I didn't vote for him in the Republican primary. And a lot of folks did.
But you chose to put a man back in the Oval Office who you said, let me just quote you.
Yeah.
You said that he lit the fuse for the insurrection and attempted coup in 2021. You said we needed a president that day. We didn't have one.
Yeah, and listen, I think Bill Barr said something very similar. Bill actually testified against him at the January 6th committee and said, look, general elections are binary choices in my country. They really are. We don't have a third party. It's this or that. Yeah. And you have to say, okay, do I take this person with all of their warts and all their difficulties or this person?
I mean, an insurrection against the US government is not a wart. It should be disqualifying, should it not?
I quit over it. I quit over for a different reason.
You also said, I do not think you can be a reasonable person and say that Donald Trump should be president again.
Yeah, I think
so. You're not a reasonable person.
Look, American politics is a nasty business.
Are you saying basically you're happy to shift your views because that's how politics works? Or are you saying you get the man wrong? Because you also, I just got to remind people here before we move on, just before the 2020 election, you wrote in a Wall Street Journal op-ed that, quote, if he loses, Trump will concede gracefully. He'll fight hard to make sure the results are fair. And in the end, he'll accept the result, whatever it is. How did that work out?
That's the easiest question I'll get tonight because people misunderstand this. That was not a prediction. That was advice.
It was a prediction.
It absolutely was not, and here's why. I know how Donald Trump works. By this time, after the election, I had been shut out and wasn't able to talk to the folks on the team. I believe that the RNC was lying to people like myself who were trying to encourage a discussion about the election and so forth. People stopped taking my phone calls, and I knew how Donald Trump takes information. And one of the things he reads religiously is the op-ed pages of the Wall Street Journal. I wrote that piece for an audience of one.
So you didn't believe he was going to hand over power?
You
said you didn't just write an op-ed. You went on CNBC and said, I recommend that he accept a peaceful transition of power, which I think he would do absolutely. That sounds like a prediction, which was wrong.
I was, again, advising the gentleman, and he did not take my advice.
He hasn't taken your advice on a lot of major issues. I think you were one of those people, including his vice president, his attorney general, who said, don't pardon the violent criminals from January the 6th.
I thought that was
He came in and pardoned nearly 1,600 people, many of whom attacked police officers, many of whom were prosecuted for having deadly weapons, many of whom had other convictions or pending charges for manslaughter, drug trafficking, rape, sexual assault of minors. Trump pardoned them all against the advice of his own people. What kind of person does that?
I thought it was a bad decision. I don't know why he did it. If you're not in the room with him when he's making the decisions, it's hard to understand exactly why he's doing it. By the way, his vice president said the same thing. Right? A week beforehand.
So he threw them all under the bus and just did this thing.
And he should have pardoned
and then you all just fell in line. The party always falls in line, no matter what he does.
He is the leader of the party. There's no question about that.
So just blind support from the Republicans.
Blind support. No,
I mean, this is a pretty big issue.
You can criticize, you can disagree, and then still support.
Well, nobody resigned over this. I mean, you're not in the administration, but none of these people resigned. It's a pretty big deal, right? To pardon insurrectionists who assaulted police officers.
I don't think it's the worst decision he's made. I think the worst decision he made was to take security away from various members of his first administration, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton. And I don't like John Bolton very much, but I thought there have been some
It's a horrible thing to do. He's a vindictive man. You say he's forgiving. He forgives the insurrectionists, but goes after his critics.
I think he's done a fine job as president. There's a lot of decisions.
But hold on, how can he have done a fine job as president
right now?
Well, he did. January 20th was his presidency. He began his presidency by pardoning insurrectionists. How do you just ignore that, is what I'm wondering.
You don't ignore it.
You literally are. You're saying he's done a fine job. By definition, you're ignoring.
You have to take all of the. I don't think anybody who's president does 100% of the stuff that anybody wants, other than the president.
But there have to be some red lines. There are no red lines for
you have to take a look at the totality of the circumstances, don't you? I mean, aren't there politicians you like that you haven't agreed with 100% of the time?
Yes, I think for a lot of people, for example, voting for Joe Biden on the Democratic side, he supported what happened in Gaza. That was a red line. But for Republicans with Trump, there never seems to be a red line. Whatever he does, all is forgiven.
These Republicans truly have no spine, none of them. Sometimes they may call themselves standing up to Donald Trump, but a day later, sometimes hours later, they have to give in and bend the knee to this criminal. I have no idea where some of these men, why any of them get up in the morning and put their pants and shoes on like they're men. They are really cowards. Mick Mulvaney would not at all. He's not even a part of the administration right now. And he still wouldn't come to terms with himself on that Donald Trump is a very bad person. So next we're going to hear what George Conway has to say. He's got a few choice words for Mick Mulvaney in this next clip. Let's hear George Conway here.
Defending it, but you've defended a lot of other stuff. So let's bring in our patient panel of experts. Let me begin with George Conway, lawyer, co-founder of the Anti-Trump Lincoln Project. George, you were a lifelong Republican. You're now a very well-known, outspoken critic, I think it's fair to say, of the president. Mick thinks it's unfair to talk about fascism, authoritarianism. He didn't accept any of the examples I gave. Why do you think Trump is an authoritarian?
Because of the very things that Mick wrote about in 2020. He thought it was possible that Donald Trump would ignore the results of the 2020 election. That's a fascist. That's authoritarian. He's also a pathological liar because he continued after people told him, people who came into the White House and told him, you lost. And he didn't want to believe them. He brought in other people. No staff person could prevent him from doing that. He wanted somebody to justify his lies. He is a pathological liar with no moral conscience, no decency, no honor. And that is the problem. And all of those people end up being fascists. You were right after January 6th, and I think it's a disgrace that you now sit here and try to defend him when basically he's done nothing but get worse.
Thanks, George Conway from the Lincoln Project. And if you're not following the Lincoln Project, you need to follow them across all social media. And right here, I want to let you guys know that I'm going to leave the link in the description down below to this entire show, this entire debate what Mehdi Hasan put on with his show Head to Head today. So you'll be able to see it in its entirety. But next up, we're going to hear from Greg Swensen. He's the Republican Party UK spokesman or something of that sort. And he'll be replied to by Christina Greer, which is going to pretty much be very good. You're going to enjoy that. So we're going to move on to that clip right now, and I'll see you on the other side of this one.
Bring in Greg. Greg Swensen, do you believe that Donald Trump won the 2020 election?
I'm really not sure, but I think what's important here is one of the reasons he won in 2024 is because of the pressure from the press, pressure from critics, not only calling the fascist and a racist, but also they start accusing you. How could you vote for a guy who's a misogynist, even though he's not? It's one of the reasons he won, is that the people, got a little bit offended by this sort of judgment and this virtue signaling from his critics when he's done a lot of things really well. No one's perfect, but he's doing so much good for the people that voted for him, especially the working class people in America.
I apologize, Greg, I didn't introduce you to the audience. Greg is the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, which is why I asked you about Trump and the election. Christina Greer is here, Associate Professor of Political Science at Fordham University, been waiting very patiently. Christina, is this just about liberals being upset about the way Trump speaks, or is it something more than that in your view?
I find that the defenders of Trump like to sort of talk about semantics and sort of get tied up in words. What we are looking at is public servants. You have served this country diligently. We know your CV. But you know better, yet you refuse to do better. I think that's the piece that is so frustrating with liberals or people on the left, where you were in Congress, you understand the separation of powers, you understand checks and balances, and what you're looking at right now in Trump 2.0, where he's steamrolling Congress, where he's ignoring the courts, where he's absolutely no respect for the Constitution, and in the litany of things that you listed, George, the one thing that you forgot was shame. We are dealing with a man who has zero shame. And what's even worse is that we're looking at people who were serving in Congress, who were Republicans, who actually know that this man is actually eroding our constitutional rights. And he's only able to do it because there are good-meaning Republicans who've just forgotten that they are here to serve the American people and not writing op-eds for one man and not serving one man.
I get the part that you don't like the fact that he has any shame. I get that. Is he the ideal person for president of the United States? No, but I'm okay with him being the president. I'm especially okay with him being the president over the other choice, because that's what we had. We had a binary choice. You don't get a chance to sit back. It's one of the reasons I was critical of him in the Republican primary. Primaries are when we get a chance to go and say, you know what? I get to vote for the very best person I want. And in general, it's a binary choice.
Can I just ask, what did Kamala Harris do? You obviously disagree with her politically. She's a Democrat, you're a Republican. Yeah. But what did she do that was worse than lighting the fuse of an insurrection?
It was the...
This was a pretty good expose. Mehdi Hasan, Christina Greer, and George Conway exposing the Republicans for what they are. You notice how Republicans all across every piece of social media and on all of these television shows, they keep saying this is why, and that's why Donald Trump won the 2024 election. But they never tell you why he lost the 2020 election. They forget that he lost that election, and there was a reason why. But it seems like none of the hosts of these shows ever question them on that point. You keep saying Donald Trump won 2024 because of this and because of that. Well, why did he lose 2020? When we can not even really find any of them that are still today say that he lost, but we all know that he lost. Like this guy Swensen wouldn't even say that he lost the election. But I would like one of these hosts one of these times just to ask them, why did he lose 2020 then? But I'm going to leave it here. I appreciate you guys coming back and watching the channel, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Mehdi Hasan is always a good one, all the time. I really enjoy his way of going about things, and it really gives us some insight on where things are and where we're pretty much headed. So like and subscribe to the channel, guys, if you don't mind, and I'll see you on the next one. Hope you enjoyed it. I ask you guys to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you.